Hi Wild Things, I'm back on this account to talk more about Fletcher's double album drop project that she's in the middle of, and I'm not going to lie, we're on a bit of a time crunch. We seem to be on a time crunch because by the looks of things, Fletcher is getting ready to drop the second album, or at least announce it, and potentially also drop a lead single for that album, maybe as soon as tour ends. And it is now the 14th of May. It is Tuesday, the 14th of May here in Australia at about 9 p.m, the week of the last week of tour. So there's only about 3 more days left until her tour ends. And, I do be yapping. So even though I'm going to try and make this video really quick and try and really quickly go over some of the Easter eggs I've seen, obviously I won't be able to go through all of it because, again, I'm trying to be quick. And I'm going to go through very quick track predictions for what I think is going to be on the Finding Rewilding album, the second album. And also going to go through what I'm thinking is the promo plan. I'm going to try and, put together some of the pieces that I've already, kind of like put little bits and pieces together of and try and get it to intermingle a little bit better than, some of my previous theories have necessarily mingled. That's going to be this video. This video is going to essentially be me trying to nut it all out of what I think is going to happen when tour ends. And then also obviously giving my Finding Rewilding track predictions, which I have been promising for a while. And then also show you some of the Easter eggs that I've seen that would suggest that, that album announcement and the lead single are potentially not super far away. That's going to be this video. That's what we're going to try and get through really, really, really quick. We're going to try and speed run it. So hopefully we could get this video down to maybe an hour long. That would be nice. That would be a nice change of pace for me. I always do have a lot of stuff to say about the stuff that she's doing because, a lot of work goes into the shit that she's doing. She must just be working overtime because, it's become a bit of a full-time job just to try and keep up with her. So anyway, that's the vibe. That's the vibe of the evening. We're going to at least start the video today. We might finish it tomorrow, hopefully, and then edit it and hopefully have it up before she does whatever it is that she's planning. So if you want to know what I think about all of that, stick around. So Carrie started to leave clues about how we would know that the next album is incoming before In Search of the Antidote even dropped. Before that album dropped, she did 2 podcast episodes with Shannon on the X's and O's podcast, and she just filled them with Easter eggs, to be honest. Those episodes were definitely full of Easter eggs. If you've watched my In Search of the Antidote tour breakdown video, you'll know that the outfit that she decided to wear on the podcast was definitely an Easter egg and definitely had some symbolism. Another thing that she did was obviously bring up that, Shannon started out as an internet crush because that obviously brings the double album drop project full circle in terms of, 2 stories that are, kind of the same in some ways, but very different in other ways, are being told throughout both albums. And so, I think, particularly given that, the song Crush on the first album, has a lot of references to Shannon in it, and is obviously talking about, some toxic cycles that Carrie has found herself stuck in before, which I think, potentially got triggered at some point in 2023, and made her kind of revisit all of that kind of pain and that kind of dynamic that she'd been stuck in before, and created an opportunity to kind of process some of that. She definitely left an Easter egg about that in the episodes as well. But other than the clothing Easter egg and the crush Easter egg, there was one other major Easter egg in these podcast episodes that Carrie was using to kind of allude to this incoming album project to bring the story of In Search of the Antidote full circle. And that Easter egg has to do with the songs that are attached to each of the 2 podcast episodes. So if you're not familiar, on the X's and O's podcast, each guest chooses 2 songs to go with their podcast episode. And the songs that Carrie chose to go with the first episode were her song Better Version and Sex with My Ex, which are obviously both songs about Shannon. And obviously both those songs are supposed to be tied to the first half of the Antidote album chronologically, which, you know, is the storyline about the first muse, about Shannon. And then the second two songs that she attached to the second episode are supposed to be tied more so to the Finding Rewilding album, and obviously the second half of the Antidote album, which is the second muse, which is me. Now, the second two songs are I Miss You, I'm Sorry by Gracie Abrams and Water by Tyler, but I promise you, if Carrie could, she would have made both of those songs Gracie Abrams songs. And the reason why, like, I will definitely get to at the end of this album, it has to do with kind of like how everything's going to shake out as far as I'm aware. I think, you know, if she could have, she would have made those both Gracie Abrams songs. I think she would have made the first song, I Miss You, I'm Sorry, because it is tied to one of my track predictions for the Finding Rewilding album. It's like very much one of the narratives of one of the songs that I'm expecting to be on the album. And then the second song, I think she would have chosen the song Close to You by Gracie Abrams, which, you know, I think I did see a clip of her kind of like singing somewhere, like floating around, like maybe on a bloopers reel or something. And, you know, I'm 99% sure she was singing it because she wanted it to be the second song for the second episode. Because, yeah, again, there's some lore with that I will go over at the end, because it has to do with kind of like how everything's going to unfold and how everything's going to come out. I do think it's tied to Gracie Abrams. But like I said, we'll circle back around to Gracie Abrams at the end. But for now, like the main takeaway we need to focus on is that Carrie chose Better Version and Sex with My Ex to be tied to the first podcast episode for a reason. She was deliberately singling out those two songs so that we would know that when something started to happen in the Fletchiverse to do with those two songs, that it would be signaling that something's coming. And it turns out that both of those songs were on the original set list for the In Search of Antidote tour in Europe. When the tour started, both those songs do appear on the set list. However, by the time the tour got to Paris, which was one of the final stops, both of those songs had been removed. I think she removed Better Version first, about a third of the way in, and then Sex with My Ex second, about 2/3 of the way in. And I think this was supposed to symbolize that the sentiments of these songs are no longer relevant. So she's no longer, you know, a mess and obsessed with her ex, and she's no longer, you know, in that place of like, I fixed your heart, but mine still hurts. Now, this is where things get a little bit crazy, because if you look back at the original set list and look where Sex with My Ex and Better Version were originally placed, you'll notice that they originally sandwiched the song Crush. They appeared on either side of the song Crush on the original set list before they were removed. And the thing about the song Crush is that when Carrie started making adjustments to the set list, when she removed Better Version and Sex with My Ex, she changed the lighting cues for her song Crush, because originally it was obviously this like very dark, purpley, bruised kind of looking scene, which if you've watched my In Search of the Antidote tour visuals breakdown video, like that video explains exactly why those visuals were used. But after Sex with My Ex and Better Version was removed, she changed the lighting cues to now be pink for the song Crush. And this is obviously an Easter egg not only for the Finding Rewilding album, but also for the lead single of that album, which is going to be Lesbian Crush featuring Renee Rapp, which is obviously a Mean Girls reference, which, you know, if you've watched all the videos on this channel by now, you should be well across that lore, well across what pink means, and well across why Carrie's using pink consistently to refer to the second muse, which is me, obviously. And yeah, that's kind of crazy that she did that she sandwiched Better Version and Sex with My Ex around the song Crush, and then when she removed them, she changed the lighting visuals with the song Crush to, again, Easter egg that something's coming. And that's just very clever of her, and, you know, like, love. Some of the other Crush Easter eggs that Carrie has left is that she posted a snippet from the lyric video for Crush to her Instagram on Lesbian Visibility Day, as in lesbian crush. She recently posted a live version of the song Crush in black and white, which is a reference to the line from Daylight, I used to think love was black and white, but it's golden, which obviously compares and contrasts two muses the same way that Crush version 1 and Crush version 2 is obviously going to compare two muses. And then she also posted to a soundbite from Billie Eilish's unreleased song Lunch, which obviously includes a lot of sentiments of someone being the one, someone being very edible, if you know what I mean, and having a craving, not a crush. So yeah, like very crush heavy kind of like references in that song. And she even like wrote in the comment box, it's giving crush me, again, kind of like alluding to Crush. And it just so happens that Billie Eilish's album is coming out on May 17th, which, you know, is the day after Carrie's tour wrap. So, you know, if there's some sort of like overlap there, like I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if the same day that Billie's album came out, she released Lesbian Crush featuring Renee Rapp, or at least kind of announced it around that time. Like, I don't think that's accidental. I think that was very much an Easter egg. To be real with you, I am leaning towards a May 17 release date, given that, you know, that's the day after tour wraps, the day immediately after. And, you know, like Carrie has been leaving some pretty heavy-handed hints that, you know, when tour ends, that's when things are going to happen. And this first started behind the scenes. Like she kind of let me know privately before she started like posting kind of like a lot of things online to let me know that that would be happening. Because like ages back, like before the Paris show, I was in her DMs and I was talking about how I didn't want to wait until she was here in July. I was like looking at her tour schedule and I was like, you need to be in the US 2 weeks after your European tour wraps. Like I am praying to God that that doesn't mean that you won't be here until, you know, either, you know, June or July. And then the next day she posted on TikTok, she posted this TikTok, and she captioned it, "The Aftermath Tour Flying By." And, you know, I immediately kind of clocked it as after tour flying. Like I was just like, what's the bet that that caption is supposed to read after tour I'm flying, to let me know that she's coming straight here after Europe. She's not going back to the US. And, you know, like that's what I sent her in her DMs, being like, that's what I clocked. I hope that's, you know, the correct interpretation of what you just posted. And then, you know, I was like, pretty please, yes. I'll put your cherry on top, obviously making a reference to her song Cherry. And then it just so happened that this happened immediately before her Paris show. And the next day when she did the sound check at Paris, she played Cherry in the sound check. And I was like, I feel like that's confirmation. You know what I'm saying? Like I was just in her DMs yesterday saying, pretty pleased with a cherry on top. And then she's playing Cherry in Paris. I was like, that cannot be a coincidence. It has to be confirmation that, you know, everything's going to go down immediately after tour wraps. So yeah, essentially I am thinking a May 17 release day for the track Lesbian Crush. I'm expecting probably some sort of like Easter egg maybe on Wednesday this week. So on Wednesday the 15th, which is, you know, essentially tomorrow here at the time that I'm recording this, but, you know, it's a little over 24 hours away given that, you know, she's a little behind in Europe at the moment. Yeah, I'm expecting her to like maybe rock up to her Wednesday night show in Dublin wearing pink, and then maybe make the announcement, you know, like right before it drops, like right before Friday. So like sometime late on the 16th, probably in Australia. Like, yeah, probably late our time here in Australia, she'll make the announcement. By the way, Lesbian Crush is coming out tomorrow. And yeah, that's kind of what I'm leaning towards. I do have, you know, some evidence that she's been working on a music video in Paris while she's been over in Europe touring, which I'll insert the TikTok that I made about that. into this video, so you can see like what evidence I've seen that there seems like there's going to be a music video coming, and I would expect that to drop also on the 17th. And I'm expecting some sort of like getting on a plane imagery like right at the end of that film clip. This is not a drill. Carrie Fletcher is on the streets of Paris quoting Mean Girls, and it seems like Renee Rapp is also in France. Like, let's fucking go. The music video for Lesbian Crush featuring Renee Rapp. When? Her posting a clip from her song Crush on Lesbian Visibility Day was a pretty strong clue that this was coming, but this post makes it absolutely undeniable. Lesbian Crush featuring Renee Rapp is the next song to drop. 2 days after I posted that, by the way, Carrie uploaded this TikTok where she's using the sound that I was quoting in that video. You know, the part where I was like, let's fucking go? She literally used that sound 2 days later to be like, let's fucking go. And then again, made another reference in the caption about something bittersweet happening at the end of tour. It's been bitter that the tour ended, but it's sweet that she gets to release something. Like, I'm for sure taking this TikTok as confirmation that, all this is going down immediately after tour ends. But before we dive into what I think the promo is going to be and exactly what date I think the Finding Rewilding album will actually drop, I want to speed run the tracks that I think is going to be on the album in roughly what order I think they're going to appear in, and like roughly what the track's going to be about based on, kind of the clues that Carrie's been leaving as she's been making the album, keeping in mind that most of the tracks for Finding Rewilding, I think, were written before the tracks for In Search of the Antidote were written. So some of these, kind of tracks are, like written early 2023, and, are going to rely on me kind of digging up through the archives to like find stuff. So yeah, that's what this is going to be. We're going to do speedrun all the tracks. So I think the first track on the album is potentially called Gay Panic, and I think the song is going to be about kind of liking someone from afar and being kind of like too scared to talk to them or too shy to talk to them. And the reason why I think this track will be called this and will be about this is because Carrie has left some Gay Panic Easter eggs over the course of the last 600 days or however many days we're up to now. And like one of the early ones was her TikTok that she posted after getting off the stage with Miley. She was like, I'm having gay panic right now. I think it was TikTok, it might have been Instagram. And then she also posted another one after her LA Pride performance where she essentially helped Tuvelo flash the crowd. She also captioned that gay panic, I think. And then there was a comment of mine when she was opening for Panic at the Disco that she liked, where I was talking about, and then there was Gay Panic at the Disco. So there's definitely been some Gay Panic clues. So I feel like that might make the most logical sense in terms of a track title, given that, I was expecting there to be a song on the album about being essentially too shy or too scared to talk to someone that you think is cute. I think this soundbite that Carrie posted like really early on, I think this was the very first soundbite that she posted for this double album drop. Obviously when it was going to be one album, it was going to be F2, it was going to be called Finding Rewilding. This was the very first soundbite we ever got from her new project. And the only line that, was leaked was this talk when you make me line. And yeah, I have a feeling that, it's going to be some sort of line to do with, how do you expect me to talk to you when you make me kind of like gay panic or shy or, whatever it is. Like, I think that's what the line that she leaked is about. I'll play it for you so you can hear kind of the vibe.
If when you did the I can't. Why? Carrie.
Talk when you make me.
If when you did the I can't. Why? Carrie.
Talk when you make me.
Essentially, I'm expecting the track to have a bit of like a Nonsense by Sabrina Carpenter kind of like feel to the lyrics, but have it more being like a bit more of a pop rock kind of sound, maybe something similar to the songs on Girl of My Dreams. And I think it will be intentionally referencing Nonsense by Sabrina Carpenter, given that, you know, that was one of our very early interactions. She posted on TikTok to Sabrina Carpenter's Nonsense because obviously it contains a line about having wild thoughts. And this was in direct response to a comment that I left on one of her videos. So yeah, there was definitely a little Finding Rewilding back and forth to do with the song Nonsense. So I think it would make sense if there's some sort of like kind of nonsense-esque feel to this song when it drops, but obviously, you know, in a more kind of like Fletcher kind of sound. And I am expecting it to be a bop. I am expecting it to be a strong track on the album, which I think would make sense for it to be first, particularly given that, you know, I think this track would have been the original lead single had the original Finding Rewilding like marketing strategy been employed if it hadn't have been changed, which, you know, I went over in my Forbidden Lovers video if you want to know more about exactly what I thought was going to happen and when, and, you know, how everything was going to release. But yeah, essentially I think she was going to start off the promo for Finding Rewilding with this like gay panic track, and yeah, have it, you know, be a little bit vague about who it's about, to kind of, yeah, start to tease that, you know, she has a crush on someone. And I do think that Carrie left 3 intentional gay panic Easter eggs with 3 separate people, with Miley, then with me, and then with Tuvelo, so that, you know, had the original Finding Rewilding marketing strategy gone ahead and had Gay Panic been the first single to drop, that would have given people 3 options to argue about in terms of who the song was about. Yeah, I think like her leaving, you know, a couple of clues for different people was intentional, and that would have been part of the original marketing strategy to have people, you know, debating who she was talking about when she dropped a single about being too shy to talk to someone because they give you gay panic and having a crush on them and, you know, not being able to say anything to them because, yeah, you're too scared, you're too shy. Yeah, I think that's all intentional. I think she left those Easter eggs on purpose. Obviously, I don't think she will need those Easter eggs anymore, given that, you know, the whole strategy's changed, and, you know, I think she's just going to go ahead and drop Lesbian Crush. I don't think she's going to drop this first track first anymore. But yeah, like I do think, you know, as part of the original marketing strategy, she had this song set up to, yeah, kind of create some mystery, some intrigue. And yeah, like I do think she was being very intentional and deliberate with that. I think track 2 on the album was obviously going to be Lesbian Crush featuring Renee Rapp. And that track was going to be based on, you know, our very first kind of like proper public interaction where we told each other we liked each other. Because, you know, obviously I made the very first video in this YouTube series, where I quoted Mean Girls and being like, I guess Fletcher has a big lesbian crush on me. And then, you know, she obviously responded to that YouTube video by recording a TikTok the next day where she'd used the sound from Mean Girls as the song that she's kind of like, as the sound that she's lip syncing to confirm that, you know, my suspicions were correct and she did have a big lesbian crush on me. And then obviously, you know, given that that was the interaction we had, and Renee Rapp has played Regina George in the Mean Girls musical movie and the Broadway adaptation, like obviously what she was going to do was call up Renee Rapp and be like, hey, do you want to be the feature on this track? Like if she wanted to make a song about this moment, like that's obviously who she was going to call to be a feature. And that's what she did. You know what I'm saying? Like that's obviously what she did. So that's obviously the collab that they worked on together that is very much still alive and well. And is definitely going to be the song that is, you know, I'm pretty sure it's going to be the lead single of the album. And yeah, like that's what the song is going to be about. It's going to be about having a big lesbian crush on someone. And obviously we've had so many Easter eggs for this track, given that it's supposed to be kind of the big main lead single for this album. Carrie had posted a photo of a sign that said girl crush, like probably like the day that she rang Renee Rapp up. Like I'm pretty sure she posted this still in 2022. Like she had this one cooking the whole time. Obviously we've had, you know, the Crush Polaroid, the Crush Valentine's Day underwear drop this year. She's said, you know, that she's had crushes on audiences when she's played lots of shows.
But you guys make me nervous, Calgary. I have a big fat crush on you.
And last year she went so ham on the pink eyeshadow, which was based on us having this moment like not long after we had that exchange with the lesbian crush sound. I posted to another Mean Girls sound talking about on Wednesdays we wear pink, and then the very next night she played a show where she did her own eyeshadow, like bright pink, in response to my TikTok. And then basically the whole year ever since, she's like taken every opportunity she could to, you know, make sure she's always wearing pink eyeshadow or wearing it like super often. And then she also performed Better Version for MTV in a pink suit, and has also used pink in the music videos as well as in a lot of her lighting cues on set for her tour, to obviously reference the same muse that Lesbian Crush is about. So this one's a biggie. Like I really think the track's going to be fire. I think it's probably going to be my favorite track on the album, just, you know, based on kind of, you know, how much Renee and Carrie have been hyping it up. Like they've been, you know, keeping this one under wraps for so long. And yeah, like I bet $1 million it's so good, and I bet they're going to be so excited to finally release it. Because yeah, it's going to be a special one. It's a special track. It signifies a very magical moment. And you know, Carrie and Renee are obviously both so talented, and you know, like they've been leaving references left, right, and center, particularly Carrie. She's been leaving so many references. Like I'm just sure she's just so proud of it, so proud of the track. So I'm really excited to hear this one. I think there's going to be a song on the album called Wet Dream or Vivid Dream or Wild Vivid Dreams or just Wildest Dreams or something like that, given that about halfway through last year, Carrie did an interview where she was talking about prophetic dreams that she has, and I think she called them Wild Vivid Dreams in the interview. And I think that's going to be kind of the theme of one of the songs. I think there's going to be a song about her having prophetic dreams and then them coming true. Particularly given that, you know, she talked about that in an interview, and I just had a little spidey sense go off as soon as I saw it, and I DM'd her and said, you know, I have a feeling this might be a song title, have a feeling, you know, there's something here in terms of, yeah, the Wild Vivid Dreams. And then she reposted the interview to her story like a couple of hours later after I DM'd her that. So I kind of took it as confirmation that, you know, my little spidey sense was going off for a reason, and that is going to appear on the album in some capacity. And I have a feeling it might be a whole song, particularly given that, you know, we have so much lore in terms of like dreams in our connection. Like there's been so many times that like I've had, you know, dreams about things and then something's happened the next day to do with whatever I dreamt about. And if you've watched the first part of my 3-part series on this channel about the Errors of Us, video, the first part is the original How I'm Doing video. I did actually insert a TikTok into that video where I explained the very first kind of prophetic dream that I had about her, that, you know, we met on a train and we fell in love, hence the train imagery in the film clip for Errors of Us. So like dreams are very significant. You can go back and watch the How I'm Doing video if you want to know exactly what I said in that TikTok. But yeah, I have a feeling it was the same for her. I have a feeling the same way that I had a prophetic dream about her before we crossed paths, I have a feeling that she had a prophetic dream about me before we crossed paths. And so, yeah, I am expecting somewhere on the album for there to be, you know, some sort of song about dreams and some sort of, you know, song about kind of dreaming of someone and then ending up with them, which, you know, I think Joyride was also an Easter egg for. And I have a feeling that it could be the third song and it could be called something like Wet Dreams, Wild Dreams, Vivid Dreams, or something like that.
I'm so great. Like, I have the most vivid, wild dreams of all time, and they happen. Like all of them happen. And I have dreams from like years ago that are so wildly specific that will like play out, and then I'll go to write something down, or I'll go to type something in to find it in my notes folder, and I'll like find this dream and it'll like have come to life. I had a dream like 3 years ago that I was on a boat with Kelsey Ballerini celebrating a song that we had just put out. And this is what I wrote down. And then I told Kelsey this the other day. And just a couple weeks ago, we were in Mexico and we were on a boat celebrating Better Version coming out. And I didn't remember that like I had this dream or that this had happened. And Kelsey and I hadn't even met at the time.
I think the 4th song on the album is going to be about astrology, and I think it's going to be featuring Upsol, who was one of the confirmed collabs for the original F2 for, the original Finding Rewilding album before it was split into 2 albums, In Search of the Antidote and Finding Rewilding. They collabed like very, very, very early last year, I think, in 2023, or potentially late 2022, early 2023. So Upsol was another confirmed collab. And the reason why I think this song is going to be about astrology in some capacity is obviously that, one of the big things that kind of like started this whole thing between Carrie and I was obviously a little interaction that had to do with astrology, or a few interactions that had to do with astrology, like kicked this whole thing off. So the astrology law, which is essentially the basis of our entire connection, actually begins in July 2022, which is almost 2 years ago now, and is 100% the reason why she planned her Australia tour dates for July 2024 to mark the anniversary of the very first interaction we ever had on TikTok, which happened when I posted a TikTok video on my astrology page about her birth chart based on the birth time that I had at the time, which was obviously incorrect. But yeah, I made a video about it. And then she found the video, she commented on it, my God, my poor therapist, or something like that. And yeah, obviously liked the TikTok, and then I replied to her comment, essentially pretending to like use money to like wipe my tears, and I was like, I think your therapist is going to do just fine out of you. You know what I'm saying? Like, which was a little bit sassy. I'm not going to lie. That was sassy. But that was our very, very, very first interaction. Yeah, she commented on my, commented on a TikTok of mine talking about her birth chart. I responded with another video, and she also liked that video, and that was our very first interaction in July 2022. And then in September, so a few months later, when Carrie followed me back on TikTok on my main account, on my Jade Rewilding page, she immediately posted this TikTok where she was talking about her big 3. And as soon as I clocked that TikTok, I just had a feeling that TikTok was for me. Was supposed to be, her trying to let me know that she was an astrology girly too, because maybe she had a little lesbian crush on me. Which, that was basically the catalyst of like this whole Fletcher series on YouTube, and like, like this whole thing, essentially, this whole thing started because we did some astrology back and forthing. Because yeah, as soon as I saw this TikTok, I clocked it for what it was. Her trying to let me know that she was like maybe into the same things as me, which is very cute in retrospect. But anyway, after I saw this TikTok, I ended up commenting on it, asking for an accurate birth time, obviously as a little callback to the very first interaction that we had, but also I just needed to know what that birth time was, because I needed to do some research based on, me having a feeling that she might have a crush on me. I was like, I need to check our synastry. I need to, make sure she's not going to fuck me over. Like, I need to make sure that, if I have a little crush on her and she has a little crush on me, it's actually going to work out, because, the discography doesn't look good. And unless I'm pretty sure about this one, it might be worth a pass. You know what I'm saying? Like, just based on what I knew at the time, I was just like, this is a risky move. And I need this information for myself. to actually see if we would vibe or not. So yeah, I asked her for her accurate birth time for personal reasons, and she commented back her accurate birth time. And you know, that definitely also spurred some more kind of flirting, obviously, after we had that interaction, after she told me her birth time. And I obviously looked at our synastry chart and realized that we're like super compatible and there was lots of synastry for like marriage forever. I was like, okay, this might actually be the one. This might be a good thing to pursue. And yeah, like obviously that was also another big reason why I ended up posting the very first video in this YouTube series about whether or not Fletcher had a big lesbian crush on me, because, you know, I'd looked at our synastry and I was like, this might very well be the thing. This might be the one. And so, you know, because I already had a feeling that she had a crush on me, obviously I was going to make that video and just kind of suss the vibe, give her an opportunity to like shoot her shot. That was basically the beginning of the end. That was, you know, how this whole thing started, essentially. And I can imagine that she might want to write a song about that. I can imagine that Carrie might want to kind of commemorate that being, you know, how we kind of connected, with some sort of song. I don't know what she's going to call it. I have a feeling it'll have something to do with astrology. I think it would make sense for there to be a song about, you know, something to do with like these first interactions we had, about, you know, her maybe saying, oh my God, my therapist, or, you know, like drag me, or like something like that, or I have a crush on this girl, she's into astrology. I don't know. Like, I don't know exactly what the song might entail. If it'll be about her astrology or my astrology or our synastry together, or, you know, whatever it might be. Like, yeah, I have a feeling it'll have to do with, you know, astrology in some regard. I'm just not sure what direction she's going to take it in. But yeah, essentially, I think the reason why she chose to collab with Upsole for this song is because Upsole, I'm pretty sure, is the Sagittarius sun, as am I. So I think, you know, particularly if she wants to write a song about kind of like reading me back, given that I obviously read her chart in my first two kind of like major videos kind of to her or about her that she saw. Like it might make sense that she might have tried to read me back and, you know, might have leaned on Upsole for that, given that she's also a Sagittarius sun and seems to know a lot about astrology. Or it might be like she might go in another direction. But yeah, she might have wanted to have a Sagittarius sun as the feature, you know, for a reason. Because I'm obviously a Sagittarius sun. Like, I think it would just make sense for her to have the astrology video, the astrology track featuring an artist that's the same sign as kind of the muse. And for the very first Sagittarius season after we connected in December 2022, she did actually post to Instagram and captioned it Sag season. So, you know, like that could be the title potentially, Sag season, or something to do with that. Or yeah, I have a feeling the Sagittarius sun thing will have something to do with the song. Like that'll be in there somewhere. I'm just not really sure on what capacity it'll be in there. But yeah, like I have a feeling that, you know, that's going to be kind of the general vibe of the song. And I think that's why she chose to collab with Upsole, who's also a Sagittarius sun. Like that would make sense to me. And yeah, I have a feeling it's going to have something to do with all of this like astrology lore that kind of basically connected us to begin with in some capacity. I'm just like not 100% sure like what direction she's going to take with it. But that's what I'm pretty sure track 4, or like at least one track, is going to be about. It's going to have something to do with astrology. I'm not going to lie, trying to pick a 5th track for this album was hard. Like I am not 100% sold on the track that I've put in the 5th position, purely based on the fact that, you know, Carrie obviously takes a lot of inspiration from Taylor Swift, and there's this whole Taylor Swift lore about making the 5th track like particularly devastating. And, you know, there's kind of nothing on my predictions list that kind of fits the vibe of that kind of fifth track kind of essence. So I'm just gonna like have my best guess. And maybe go for like spicy instead is like the only way that I can kind of justify what I'm going to put in the fifth track position, just because I cannot think of which of these 11 songs that I'm predicting would fit the fifth track better than a spicy kind of song. For the sake of having to put something in the fifth track, I'm going to go with the Tuvelo collab for the fifth track position, and I'm guessing that it's going to be a sample of Tuvelo's song Talking Body. And the reason why I think they're going to sample Talking Body is a few reasons. First of all, Carrie obviously brought out Tuvelo to her set during Pride Month last year in 2023 to perform the song Talking Body together, which I do feel like was a bit of a Easter egg that, potentially they've sampled that song for Carrie's album. And the other thing that's making me think that it's a Talking Body sample is because Carrie's had Talking Body on her playlists last year for a little while. And also, if you watch the very first YouTube video in this Fletcher series and watch the whole timeline of, all of Carrie and my kind of like subtle back and forth and interactions at the time that I was making that video, I think the very last thing that I put into that video was that, I posted like a picture, I think, to either my Instagram or my TikTok of me in a bikini because I wanted Carrie to be talking about my body. You know what I'm saying? Like that was the vibe, and that's in the very first video in this like Fletcher series. So if you go back and watch that, you'll see me talking about that and see me talking about, how I liked how she reacted to that photo, and, like that was the reaction I was hoping for. You know what I'm saying? So, I think it would make sense if she sampled Talking Body, given that there's definitely some Talking Body lore with Finding Rewilding that dates back to that very first video. And if you go through my old TikToks, I do tell a story in one of them about how I went and saw Katy Perry's Prism World Tour in 2014, and it just so happened that Tuvelo opened for her at that tour, and I hadn't heard of her before she opened for Katy Perry, and it just so happened that, I basically fell in love with her and also fell in love with the song Talking Body the second I heard it, and ever since it's been one of my favorite songs of all time. Like, I listen to it like a lot. Like it's definitely an old song that I listen to a lot. And then when Carrie was introducing Tuvelo for her set at Pride Month, she did either, I can't remember if she said it or if she like captioned it on a photo afterwards. Obviously I can't look at her Instagram because she's deleted her whole feed to see if she captioned it or she said it, but she made mention somewhere that Talking Body is one of her favorite songs too. And, particularly given that I'd said that it was one of my favorite songs of all time, for her to then turn around and say that it was one of her favorite songs of all time when she introduced Tuvelo to her Pride Month kind of set, like introduced her as kind of like a guest performer. Like that definitely set off my spidey senses, that kind of my, little intuition that maybe they'd sampled Talking Body when they were in the studio right at the start of the year might have been right. I think the sixth track on the album is going to be called King Carrie Era, and the lore behind King Carrie Era goes way back again to the very, very start of Finding Rewilding, one of the very first interactions we had after we became TikTok mutuals and after the Girl of My Dreams album dropped. Carrie posted this TikTok where she was kind of like giving a little bit, like daddy energy, I would say, in the TikTok. And so I decided to comment on it. TBH, it's giving, I've got a princess handcuffed to my bed, as a little way of flirting. I think she was responding to me somehow with the TikTok originally, but I can't remember what she was responding to. But mostly I commented back to like let her know that I'd like clocked the response. And then immediately after I commented that on that TikTok, she posted a photo to her Instagram where she had the word king in the background. And so again, I immediately clocked that as like her communicating back to me based on what I'd said about princesses to her in her comment section a few hours earlier. And so then I commented on it, King Carrie Era. And it was the only comment on the entire post that she liked. She liked the comment. It was the only one that she liked. So I knew that, you know, like she was definitely, like posting that for me, and definitely, you know, like, yeah, trying to let me know that she has that king energy. That obviously happened right at the start. I think before I'd even made a single YouTube video about all of our back and forths. So that must have been in September or October. September, I think, 2022. And then she dropped a few more Easter eggs that, you know, that interaction had turned into a song in March 2023 when she was in Europe opening for Panic at the Disco, because she uploaded some things onto her stories where she was like making some references to that interaction her and I had. The only screenshot I could find was this one where she talks about, you know, spending time in the countryside and being treated like a princess and being in her royalty era. So again, kind of making that connection between princess and royalty. Like, I don't think she wanted necessarily to say king just for the sake of like trying to keep it subtle. But yeah, she was definitely kind of like tying like those kind of like royalty words together in this particular Instagram story. And I think there was other ones, like I remember one with kind of like a bit of a dark background where she either again called herself like in a royalty era, or I can't remember if she maybe again said something about being treated like a queen or a princess or something like that. I remember she didn't say king specifically. It looked like she posted it a few times, but she kept seeming to kind of like, yeah, dance around it. Which was making me think that, yeah, there was going to be a song on the album called King Carry Erin. It was going to have something to do with kind of like some sort of like switch up from, like some sort of switch up in energy where, you know, she's like maybe embracing her masculine energy way more, which she has been Easter egging a lot, even in the, like in the promo for the In Search of Antidote album. She was definitely Easter egging that kind of like shift. And this is also why I think the track will appear in the 6th position, because, you know, some of the other Easter egging that she was doing that was along a similar line to do with, her shifting from that kind of like more feminine, you know, that I think is a little bit more performance based for her, like not necessarily as authentic. Like she definitely has feminine energy, but just she has a lot of masculine energy. I'm not going to lie. That girlie is full of masculine energy. She's definitely heavily Easter egging, like this shift from, you know, a bit more of like kind of like overdoing it or like overperforming the feminine energy that she does have into this more authentic expression of like more masculine energy. She's definitely masculine in a bit of a feminine way, but yeah, like that shift into something that's more authentic. She has been Easter egging that a lot in the In Search of Antidote era, and part of her Easter egging that was kind of heavily implying that, you know, this kind of performance-based feminine was like very evident in her past relationship. Yeah, like I think that will be the reason why it's in the 6th track, because obviously the number 6 is related to that past connection and that past like shadow mate energy. And yeah, like I think it would make sense for her to put it in this song based on what it's about and based on what she's already Easter egged in the 6th position. Mostly because that would be, like just very consistent with what she's been Easter egging. She's been Easter egging this kind of like shift from like a more performance-y feminine into a more authentic, you know, masculine with definitely like a feminine edge to it. That, you know, happened to coincide with this kind of like, being with someone who, you know, you felt like you had to kind of like lie to and not be yourself with and make you wish that you were someone else, and, you know, like all that sort of kind of like angst into a connection where there's more space for like truth, more space for authenticity, and things like that. So yeah, like I think it would make sense for this track to be in the 6th position. I can't think of another position that this track would be in other than the 6th. Like, I think it just fits a little bit too well. So I'm really expecting King Carry Era to be in the 6th track. And to, like maybe, aside from obviously referencing her shift into this energy, like maybe like kind of talking about gender identity stuff as well, potentially, because obviously she has been kind of like, leaving some subtle clues that, she's been on a bit of a journey in terms of identity. So like I am expecting this track to kind of like address those gender kind of things for herself. Yeah, I'm expecting this track to be like a heavy kind of like gender identity kind of vibe, and like talk about, you know, her experience of her own energy in some capacity. And yeah, that's what I'm essentially expecting the song to be about. I'm expecting it to be like very empowered. And yeah, like I think introducing more formally that energy that, you know, she's definitely been in for a while now, and been like growing and expanding in and maturing in. And yeah, she's definitely done a lot of work on her masculine over this like past, you know, however much time we've been connected. Like I've seen, you know, huge like growth and just like huge, like shifts. And so, yeah, that's what I'm expecting this song to kind of like tell a bit of a story around. I think track 7 is probably going to be Carrie's Girl. As soon as I saw this as the name of one of her cocktails at her Meet Me at the Bar events in June 2023, my little spidey senses went off and I was like, I bet that's the name of one of the songs on the Finding Rewilding album. Particularly given that, you know, obviously after we had our exchange in October 2022 where we told each other we liked each other, she immediately turned around and put a song on her playlist. I think it was October Passed Me By Girl in Red. And obviously towards the end of that song, it talks about making someone your girl. And yeah, like as soon as I put those two things together, I was like, I bet there's going to be a song called Carrie's Girl, and I bet it's going to be about, you know, making someone her girl. Now, I was pretty convinced that this was going to be a track title just based on the cocktail name and the callback to the song October Passed Me By alone. Like I thought, you know, this is definitely going to be a song on the album about Carrie, like essentially wanting to lock it down with me and wanting me to be her girl. But then I looked at the ingredient list of said cocktail and noticed that the first ingredient is tequila. And when I looked at what tequila brand in particular was sponsoring these events, it turned out it was Don Julio tequila. And the thing about Don Julio is obviously the initials for such a name would be DJ. And it just so happens that my initials are JD. And it just so happens that Carrie also collabed with JD Sports around the same time. And so I think that those two collabs, the DJ and the JD, were very intentional to let people know exactly who she was wanting to make her girl. Like I think the Don Julio tequila, the DJ tequila was supposed to be an Easter egg for the initials of the person that she wanted to make, the person she wanted to be her girl, Carrie's girl. And the reason why I've put it in the track 7 position is because I think it would make sense for Carrie to try and mirror the track that's in the 7th position on the In Search of the Antidote album, because obviously that track is attached to you and it's about Carrie being, you know, kind of afraid of relationships and afraid of being hurt again. I think it would be a nice mirror if track 7 on the Finding Rewilding album was like, you know, I'm not afraid to lock this down though, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, like talking about, you know, in the past, maybe having some fucking attachment issues, to say the least, and then turning around and being like, but this girl, I want this girl to be my girl. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that would be a nice mirror. So I think it makes sense for this track to be in the 7th position, just based on, like how that would then tie this song to Attach to You. Like, I think that would make a lot of sense for the 7th position, and that's why I think the 7th track on the Finding Rewilding album will be Carrie's Girl. I think track 8 on the album is going to be some sort of Girl of My Dreams Part 2 kind of track. And essentially, I think the genesis of this song, the idea that kind of sparked this song potentially, was a poem that I wrote in December 2022. So like about 2 months into us like doing the TikTok back and forward like exchange every single day. 2 months into that, I wrote this poem. And essentially it's about, you know, after you become your own love of your life, she is an inevitability. Like the love of your life coming in is inevitable. And so I think that's going to be the genesis of a song on the album, and I think it would make sense for it to be called Girl of My Dreams Part 2, because obviously in this poem I kind of brought in like the Girl of My Dreams concept from Carrie's previous body of work, and I also brought in the Who Tames the Ego and Wilds the Soul concept that I introduced in the very first video on my YouTube channel about the Fletcher verse. And that, you know, was definitely something that I was looking for going into my connection with Carrie. Like, that's something that I was looking for, and I think she was looking for a girl of my dreams type person. So, yeah, I think this poem will essentially be the genesis of the Girl of My Dreams Part 2 song. I'm not sure exactly what it'll be called. Girl of My Dreams Part 2 makes sense, particularly given that on her drinks menu for her Meet Me at the Bar events, again, she did have a cocktail called Girl of My Dreams. And the thing about this cocktail, the ingredient list on this cocktail, that makes me know that she was referencing me in the context of this Girl of My Dreams drink, was that she included the ingredients elderflower and honey syrup. And both of those ingredients are deeply, deeply, deeply tied to me. The elderflower lore starts way at the start of our connection. Obviously, we told each other we liked each other in October 2022, early October 2022. And then, you know, obviously started back and forthing every day on TikTok, like referencing each other and kind of like posting for each other essentially. But at that time, in early October 2022, she hadn't texted me, she hadn't messaged me and been like, yeah, I do think you're cute, yeah, I do have a crush on you, I'm getting on a flight immediately after this tour ends and taking you to dinner. You know what I'm saying? Like, that hadn't happened, and I was a little bit upset that that wasn't the situation and that we were just like subtly backing and forthing. And then it just so happened to happen that she was on tour at the time, and she did something while she was on tour, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it was, but it made me a little bit jealous. And so because I was, you know, jealous and then also a little bit miffed that she had not messaged me, like, you know, asking me out, I decided to respond to that by casting a spell on her, a bad luck spell. And this is supposed to be like minor inconveniences, like, you know, breaking a nail or, you know, something like that. Like, it's supposed to be like very minor inconveniences, but, you know, potentially because I was a little bit upset, I might have put a little bit of extra pizzazz into the spell, because, you know, it turns out that she posted, I think on Twitter, letting everyone know that she was sick while she was on tour. And when I saw that, I was like, uh-oh, like I might have, you know, taken things a little bit far, and potentially my bad luck spell that was supposed to be a little minor inconvenience might have turned into a bit less of a minor inconvenience, a bit more of a major inconvenience, considering, you know, you get paid to sing and now you're sick and on tour. I was just like, yeah, that might be my bad, you know what I'm saying? So I felt a little bit bad. And so in response to finding out that, you know, she'd gotten sick, I posted this TikTok where I talk about the healing properties of elderflower. In witchcraft, it's considered like a very, very healing flora. It's considered, you know, very powerful in healing basically any ailment. It is actually like very good for you to consume anyway. Like, it's an ingredient in very natural, like cough medicine a lot of the time, because it does have like literal healing properties. But in witchcraft, it's considered like especially like it's considered to have like a lot of healing, like woo-woo, not just to heal like physical things, like, you know, being physically sick, but also to, you know, basically heal anything else. So yeah, I was like talking about the woo-woo witchy like healing properties of elderflower in this TikTok, obviously intending for her to see it, because yeah, like I felt a little bit bad. I was like, I think maybe I took things a little bit far with my reaction, and you know, Kelly should not be sick on tour. So I'm gonna like post this and help her out. So a little bit, it's giving like the cure is in the poison, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it might have been my fault, but, you know, at least I offered some help in terms of like the witchy, some help in like counteracting the witchy vibes. I was like, this is a good remedy for, you know, what I may or may not have done. So that's how the elderflower law came into be. Like it's an extremely healing flower, and it has extremely healing properties. Yeah, it might have been my fault that she fucking needed it, but you know, at least I had the cure. You know what I'm saying as well. In my defense, at the time, I had no idea that there was a marketing scheme afoot. From where I was standing, I was just assuming that she was choosing not to reach out to me properly. I was assuming that she was choosing just to do these subtle back and forths, and that maybe she was, you know, in a bit of a fuckboy era, and that was why she wasn't DMing me. Especially given just some of the songs on her like recent body of work. Like I think it was fine for me to, like, it was reasonable for me to assume, oh, she's just being a fuckboy, and you know, for her then to get that response from me when, you know, she was making me a little bit jealous. Like I wouldn't have, you know, done what I'd done. Like I wouldn't have cast a spell, much less told her about it, if I wasn't ready to walk. You know what I'm saying? And you know, from where I was standing at the time, I was like, oh, she's just being a fuckboy. I'm gonna, you know, cast this bitch and be out. But, you know, like based on, you know, her basically not reacting to that at all, like not reacting to that bad luck spell, and literally just carrying on as normal, like back and forthing with me. Like I think, you know, she turned around and immediately after I posted in front of, you know, JD Sports, which is obviously my initials. And when I saw that, I was like, this is sus. Like, how is she gonna like keep, you know, back and forthing with me and keep referencing me, and like, you know, it kind of looks like she wants me to stick around more, not less right now. So that was like very confusing when she like turned around and didn't, you know, like, yeah, when she reacted a little bit weird to what I did, that, yeah, definitely confused me. And that was actually the instigator that made me do a deep dive into her label and find out like all the sketchy stuff they'd done in the past, not only with Carrie, like in the Becky So Hot marketing, but also with other artists, to essentially like milk situations for the sake of marketing. Which, if you're not familiar with like all of that law, I would strongly recommend going back and watching my marketing video where I explain like exactly how all of the schemes have schemed, where there's been kind of gimmicks going on to make money essentially. And had all this not happened with this whole like elderflower business, like I don't think I ever would have gone down that rabbit hole and figured out, oh, she's like not allowed to talk to me because they've got this like marketing scheme planned to milk the situation with her and I for the sake of, you know, virality and making money. So in a way, it was probably actually lucky that I'm a witchcraft girly and decided to respond to the situation with that, because had I not responded in that particular way, you know, I think I would have just kept on thinking that she was being a fuckboy about stuff. And then I eventually probably would have just stopped responding to her and gone about my life, which, you know, at the same time, maybe that's my bad luck. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, if that had happened, that would have saved me so much like fucking heartache the last, you know, 2 years that I've been stuck in this situation. You know, maybe if I hadn't have figured anything out, I could have just gone on with my life. Fortunately or unfortunately, I am a witchcraft girly. I responded to that situation with witchcraft, and based on her reaction really not matching up with what I was expecting, that, yeah, definitely threw a spanner in the works and made me like rethink everything that I was thinking about the situation, and sent me down the rabbit hole to, yeah, unpack like what was going on behind the scenes with her and I. And yeah, like, because, you know, I like, as soon as I figured out that she wasn't allowed to talk to me, and yeah, like this multi-million-dollar company was using their leverage, using their legally binding contract worth hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, to dictate what she can and can't do in her life for the sake of, you know, what's going to get them the best return on investment, consequences to her be damned, and consequences to anyone else involved in her life be damned. I obviously felt a way about that and about the situation. I was empathizing with the situation, and, you know, in retrospect, that probably, you know, made me kind of a little bit vulnerable, in the sense of like, because I was empathizing with her situation and like how hard it would be to like be in that situation where, you know, this outside entity is having so much say over your life for the sake of making money. And yeah, like concocting these elaborate schemes to make you like go viral and whatever it is. yeah, like I obviously empathized that, you know, that's a shit situation to be in. And, you know, I probably put up with a lot more than, you know, I otherwise would have. So, you know, like it was good, but also kind of not good. You know what I'm saying? Like I did end up trapping myself in the situation because of my own empathy, which, you know, I would say on a surface level feels kind of bad in the sense of like, because I empathized that she was in a difficult situation, I kind of allowed like what was happening to me as a result to happen, because I empathized with the position she was in. But yeah, like even though that was like maybe not the move in terms of like protecting myself and worrying about myself, like I probably should have been like, yeah, that sounds like a fucking nightmare, but you know, I'm going to yeet myself out of here and not use me empathizing with you to like get fucking stuck in the situation with you. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, at the same time, like it was good in the sense of like, you know, it did end up creating a lot of healing for both of us at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? Like us both being stuck in this situation and like falling in love with each other anyway, even though we couldn't talk, did create like the weirdest circumstances I've ever been in my life that, you know, definitely ended up creating a lot of healing. So, you know, kind of like very fitting that, you know, this whole fucking story started with, you know, elderflower, because, you know, that's basically what ended up happening. Like I do think that the situation, even though it was like, you know, not a good situation to be in on the surface level, like at the same time, like the situation was pushing a lot of my buttons, probably a lot of Carrie's buttons too, like opening up old wounds and like forcing me to like sit with them, and actually heal them and actually feel all the feelings associated with those wounds, instead of just, you know, yeah, not not sitting with things properly and just like, you know, kind of avoiding the triggers, let's say. Yeah, like it's a funny kind of full circle moment in terms of like, you know, elderflower kind of being the reason why I ended up a little bit trapped in the situation, but then also the reason why I ended up healing a lot based on the context of the situation, based on being forced to like confront all my stuff. Yeah, like I don't know, it's very fitting. It's just it's very interesting lore, the elderflower lore, but that's essentially it. And then the honey lore also starts way at the start of our connection, because obviously when Carrie DM'd me, like I think about a week before Girl of My Dreams came out, she opened up with Hi Angel, and I opened up my message back to her with Hey Honey, and have like hey honeyed her like basically every time I've ever spoken to her since. She's always been honey to me ever since the start, which is why she's been doing some promo through the Honey Pop, and yeah, like there's definitely, you know, she's been leaving honey references in places like the Girl of My Dreams cocktail ingredient list. Like that's very intentional that she's, you know, bringing honey into the mix, because yeah, that's supposed to be a reference to me. And it actually wasn't until she put both of those two ingredients in this Girl of My Dreams cocktail at her Meet Me at the Bar events that something clicked for me, and I realized that the two things that, you know, are associated with me inside that drink, the elderflower and the honey, essentially the antidote or the antithesis to two things that were associated with her last relationship, because obviously her last relationship was associated with roses, which have thorns that will, you know, sting you, and then also bees, which again will sting you and then die. Whereas, yeah, honey is an ingredient that never expires, and it is sweet and very healing. Elderflower, also very healing, not going to hurt you. You know what I'm saying? Like there was definitely like, I think some like universal powers, like creating some parallels and some symbolism there, which I think is, you know, one of the little ways that the universe will, you know, talk to you and let you know like what's kind of like good for you and what's not good for you. Like it'll send you kind of like omens like that, like good ones or bad ones, depending on whether that person is like good for you or bad for you. I think that was like very much the case with the symbolism that got associated with our connection being honey and elderflower, particularly given that like bees and roses were associated with her last connection already. And it just happened kind of like very incidentally. Yeah, I think that's like definitely one of those universal divine plan kind of things. So yeah, essentially, I think it was this Girl of My Dreams cocktail, which I think is supposed to allude to a Girl of My Dreams Part 2 track on the Finding Rewilding album that, I think was really kind of the genesis of the song Antidote, even though the song Antidote is kind of like made out to be kind of like a prequel, I would say, to this. It turns out that, even though these Meet Me at the Bar events happened in June 2023, and I don't think it was until like maybe August or September that Carrie came up with the concept of Antidote and, wrote the Antidote song and et cetera, et cetera. I have a feeling that, this was also kind of like, foreshadowing Antidote to Carrie before Antidote necessarily existed at the same time. So it's all like very like interlinked and very kind of like symbolic as well. Like, particularly the way that Honey and Elderflower is an antithesis or an antidote to Bees and Roses, and how, the In Search of Antidote album came to be, and in terms of, the Finding Rewilding, which is the new like Girl of Her Dreams that is, post her own Girl of Her Dreams era, where she became her own Girl of Her Dreams. Like, it's all very, I don't know, symbolic, all very cute. And yeah, again, like Carrie was like alluding to this around June 2023 when she sent out promo packages as a collab with JD Sports and literally like labeled them JD plus Fletcher equals Girl of My Dreams. Like, yeah, like alluding to like I'm the new Girl of Her Dreams, but like in a more healthy and healing capacity than, the previous girls of her dreams, because she'd had her own healing era and worked on herself and was like in a different place and definitely attracting something different. Like it's all kind of like very like cute. And yeah, like the symbolism is, very potent. And I can imagine she would have wanted to write a song like about how all of these things kind of like intertwined. And like created this, like deep, meaningful kind of connection that we have. And I think this track will appear in the 8th position, given that it first of all appears in the 8th position in this cocktail like list. It's the 8th cocktail. And I think that's supposed to be an Easter egg that it's going to be the 8th track as well. And then obviously, I was born on the 8th, so it would make sense for her to put a song about, the girl of her dreams on the number of her birth date, particularly given that, like the number 8 is like a infinity symbol on its side. And, kind of like the infinity symbol obviously talks about loops, and the elderflower and honey kind of references, create a loop with her past connection in terms of, like I think she knew me when she saw me, particularly because elderflower and honey were associated with me and bees and roses were associated with her past relationship. It kind of like linked me with her past. It kind of like foreshadowed me even in her past relationship, and made sure that I think the universe made sure she would know me when she saw me based on how those two things link. I think that would make sense in terms of Girl of My Dreams Part 2 appearing in the 8th position. Like I can't imagine that it would be in any other position. I think it fits a little bit too well for this, kind of concept, even if the track title might be a little bit different, if this concept isn't the song in the 8th position. I just think it will make the most sense if that's the case, if this song, Girl of My Dreams Part 2, whether it's called that or something else, sits in the 8th position on the Finding Rewilding album. Like I think that just makes a lot of sense. I think track 9 is going to be titled ILY, and this track also has quite a bit of lore attached to it that starts in mid-2023 when I dipped. Obviously I dipped based on, that being the best decision for me at the time, based on, the hurt that I was in at the time. I was obviously very hurt. I was very much not okay, very much like burnt out, very much at the end of my rope, had hit my limit for sure. And, one of the one of the many complaints that I had at the time was that I didn't like that there was a outside entity dictating stuff about my life and putting me in the position to be at my limit, to be burnt out, and to like be suffering a world of hurt, not through my own choosing and without my consent. Yeah, like that, didn't sit right with me. And that was a major kind of reason for me dipping, or like a central point of me dipping. There was obviously lots of other things going on at the same time that, were contributing to me needing the space. And essentially after I dipped, I was getting lots of messages from the universe that it was the right thing to do. Like I opened up the book Eat, Pray, Love, which, I hadn't read in over a decade. And the very first page has a quote, tell the truth, tell the truth, tell the truth, which, what I did when I dipped. I was like, y'all are creating a fake scenario for the sake of virality and I'm out because you have literally not given a fuck that it's like caused me a world of, pain. And you didn't even fucking ask me and you've let it drag on too long and now I'm burnt out and in pain and need a break and need some healing and need some space. So yeah, immediately I was like seeing kind of signs from the universe of like that it was the right thing to do. And at the time, like I wasn't really on socials that much. And, obviously I wasn't scrolling because I'd trained my algorithms to like show me stuff to do with Carrie and I didn't want to see anything to do with her at the time. I just knew it would make it, harder and more complicated for me. So I was like very much not scrolling. And like barely posting and like barely on social media at all for a little while after I dipped. But yeah, eventually like I felt like things were shifting energetically. Like at the start when I dipped, like I did feel like there was like a blockage between me and Carrie energetically based on, me kind of reaching a point of like, I'm no longer a vibrational match for what this multi-million-dollar company is doing to me without my consent. Like I'm, not a match to that. And I felt like that was creating a block between me and Carrie because, I think she was still a match to that at the time. But yeah, after I'd had a little break, I felt the energy shift. Felt like she was like a match to me and not a match to that anymore. Like I kind of just had this like little spidey sense that something had shifted. And so, yeah, like I started like every now and again looking at what she was doing. Once I found that like vibrational shift, once I felt the shift, I kind of like went looking to see if, my felt sense was right and that I was feeling like her like aligning with me and like unaligning from that multi-million-dollar company. And one of the very first things I saw when I did end up going and looking was that she'd played a music festival where she was where she'd put jade rings on both of her index fingers.
I always have like crystals. I have turquoise on my wrist.
Very nice.
And in my ring here. I have jade on my finger here.
Very pretty.
This is a selenite ring. I have selenite in my pocket as well.
And I saw that before she performed at that festival, she'd given an interview where she was talking about redefining what success meant to her and that, she'd reached a place where her self-esteem and her health and her love life and everything else mattered so much more than, like whatever like lofty promises that this multi-million-dollar company was obviously making behind closed doors. I'll insert a clip of the interview so you can see exactly what she said for herself. But that was the gist of it. Like she made it very clear that, she'd redefined success and was going about finding it in a different way now. And that obviously, to me translated that, I was right in terms of she'd had that same vibrational shift and she was in, the same place as me again.
Do you have a clear list of the things that you want to accomplish after this?
For me, like I think I've always been somebody who like had this definition of success that was always like, oh, I need to achieve this by this date and by this time. And I think that that's something that's just such a lie. And I think it's like really beautiful to have aspirations and dreams and goals. Like obviously like it's a dream to sell out Madison Square Garden one day and to be nominated for a Grammy. And those are all things that are like on my career bucket bucket list, but at the same time, they don't, at the same time, it's like my self-worth outside of those things is like so much more. I've like redefined that a little bit, and that's just like happiness and health and wellness and love. And so, yeah.
And finally, there was some things about the outfit that she chose to wear to that festival for a performance that, were definitely screaming, something of a similar vein, particularly given that she wore this like belt that said it's only anarchy on it, and anarchy obviously means being free from controlling systems. There was also like free written in graffiti on her pants as well, which felt very fitting. And then there was one more thing that, kind of stood out to me that was written on the back of these pants as well. It was a picture of a plane flying through the sky, flying over the ocean, with the letters ILY stamped right next to it. And, like that definitely set off my spidey senses as well. And I was just like, I definitely took that as a sign that she was going to get on a goddamn plane and then come tell me things after I saw that. The thing was, like, I hadn't processed and moved through all the hurt that I was in at the time yet, obviously. Like, it hadn't been enough time. I think this was only like maybe a month or so after I dipped. I think that this was like, maybe a month after, maybe a little bit longer, maybe slightly less. But like roughly thereabouts. And so like, even though I'd seen all these things and, I had a feeling that she was, more in vibrational alignment with me than this multi-million-dollar company, and that something had shifted at the same time, like that didn't like change much. Like it definitely changed like my perspective in terms of like, like I was kind of under the impression that, if she was going to stay signed to this entity that I did not feel aligned with, that I was going to have to go and have a healing era based on all the pain that I incurred from being dragged into the situation, and that, she could, do what she's got to do, sign to that label, and then hopefully one day when she's, not signed to them anymore, fulfilled her contract and like maybe moved on to a different label that doesn't, exploit people the same way, then we would, find our way back to each other. That was kind of the place that I was in, assuming that, I'd go have a healing era. She would do what she needed to do with that label while she was still aligned with them. And then we'd find our way back to each other at a later date. But then when, I saw all this stuff, I was like, maybe, we are going to work out now. Like maybe this is our time. But even though my perspective on the timing had changed, like now I was like, oh, maybe we will work out now, or like soon. At the same time, like I was still, sitting with all the things that I felt like I needed a healing era for, you know what I'm saying? Like there was still a lot of things coming up for me, still a lot of pain, still a lot that I'd been, dragged through, and like things feeling, unrepaired and unresolved and like all that sort of stuff. So, like I was still sitting in a lot, and that hadn't magically vanished just because, like my perspective on, what might happen in the not too distant versus distant future had changed. So essentially I was like still in this place of like, I'm hurt. I need some words. I need some things. Like I need some physical things. I need some explicit things. And also like, I would kind of like an apology for being dragged into the situation and, being put in a position to be hurt. And so like the boundary that I obviously had with myself was that I was still not going to reach out to her, because obviously I'd stopped communicating with her, like stopped reaching out to her when I dipped. And, so my resolve at the time was like, well, until I get all of these other things, like that's still the vibe, you know what I'm saying? Like I was like, I'm still in that same kind of boundary in terms of like, I can't keep doing this while the circumstances still are what they are, regardless of whether this outside entity that created the scenario is still involved in the situation or not. Like, I'm still like, I still need the things that I said that I needed. And until that changes, like nothing much else has changed other than my perspective on the timing of things. And at the time, I just assumed that Carrie would know that that was the situation. I just assumed that she would know that I would have still needed those, explicit words that I would have needed to be seen, heard, and validated in my pain that I was in because of the situation, and that I might still be looking for an apology for being dragged into the situation. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just assumed that she would know that that's where I would be at. And that, you know, like I still needed to be like acknowledged in the feelings that I was in. However, at the time, I did not know that Carrie and I think differently and therefore, you know, view situations like this differently. At the time, I just assumed that she was thinking about the situation the same way that I was thinking about the situation, because I assumed that, you know, she was in a similar energy to me, that she would be coming to the situation in her feminine for like some unknown reason. I just projected that onto her and assumed that, you know, she'd know what to do because she looks like a fucking girl, you know what I'm saying? So I expected her to act like a fucking girl. But, you know, something I didn't realize until we had a very similar conflict during the Errors of Us situation, was that actually she thinks very differently to me. Actually, she'd be doing some boy brain stuff, which is essentially like she hears that I have a problem. She figures out what the solution to that problem is and she fixes it, and she assumes then everything goes back to normal and everything's fine. And, you know, obviously at the time of this kind of like first fight that we had, like big fight that we had, you know, the problem was from where she was standing. I understand that she figured that the problem was mostly that she was signed to this record label that had set up this, you know, like fake scenario for the sake of virality. And if she got rid of them, that should fix everything. Because, you know, as far as the practical elements of the situation, like, yes, that does fix the problem. Like, they caused the problem. So yes, removing them from the situation fixes the problem. But I wasn't looking for the problem to be fixed per se. I was looking to be seen, heard, and validated in my feelings. And yeah, to like have her acknowledge that I was hurt and that I needed some explicit words from her and maybe an apology. And we were definitely not seeing eye to eye on that. So essentially, like, she sees that I've clocked like all the things that she's done. And, you know, like I can see from where she's standing, she's assumed that that has meant that I understand that she's fixed the problem and now everything should, you know, go back to normal. But, you know, like I was clocking what she was doing, but, you know, from where I was standing, that did not fix the problem because I still needed to be seen, heard, and validated in my feelings. And that's what I was looking for still. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, you know, I could clock that the problem was solved, but the solution to the problem wasn't what I was looking for. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, like then we, like the fight essentially got a little bit worse before it gets better. I'm not going to lie. Because, you know, Carrie's then pulling up trying to act like nothing had happened, like that would go back to normal and we'd do our normal thing of like going back and forth on the internet and whatnot. But, you know, like I obviously was not in that place. Like I was not in the same place as her and I still needed things. And actually when she started, you know, kind of acting like nothing was wrong and that everything should go back to normal, that upset me because, you know, I thought that meant she didn't care about me, because I thought that if she wasn't doing the thing that I would know to do in a situation, which is see, hear, and validate, that must mean that she doesn't care about me. I wasn't realizing at the time that her brain works different, and her showing her the way she shows she cares about me is by fixing my problems when I have problems. So I was getting more upset with her. And I don't think she understood why I was getting more upset with her, to be totally fair with you. So while we're in this point where we're not seeing eye to eye, essentially, like I posted something, and in Carrie's defense, I was posting something to do with her. I was posting like a synchronicity I saw that had to do with her, which, you know, like I had posted a few of because I think the universe at this point was trying to get me to, you know, like warm back up to her a little bit more, even though I was really hurt. Like I think the universe was trying to like make sure I kind of stayed in the situation. So I was like seeing lots of synchronicities to do with her, and I was like starting to post some of them. And I posted one of them. And at this point, I hadn't really been active on social media again yet. However, I had just started scrolling on Twitter occasionally because I hadn't trained my Twitter algorithm to be showing me as much stuff to do with Carrie as I had trained my TikTok algorithm. And so I was scrolling on Twitter. I was like very obviously active on Twitter. Like you could look on my likes and see that I've been liking stuff. And so what Carrie decided to do after I posted something to do with her on TikTok was she decided to go to Twitter and reference the thing that I'd posted the same way that we normally would. Normally I'd post something, she'd like post something to reference it, and we'd kind of go back and forth and like create a little bit between each other for a bit. That was kind of like our thing. So yeah, she does that. Then, you know, I see it because on Twitter I didn't have her muted at this point. I had her muted on Instagram, and I was just like not scrolling on TikTok. And so then when I see that, I was like, I got like really, really upset because, you know, from where I was standing at the time, I was like for me, I was receiving it that like my feelings were wrong or bad, or I shouldn't be upset, even though I was, you know what I'm saying? Like I did not receive that well. And I was also receiving it as like her not caring about me, because I just assumed that if you cared about me, you would know to do the things that I need without me necessarily communicating them. I just assumed that, you know, she would know to do those things because I was looking at her and I'm like, you're a fucking girl. Like, you should do this because that's what girls do. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just did not occur to me. She might think different and she might not see it that way. She might have a different way of approaching things. I was just assuming and projecting that her brain works the same way that mine works. And anyway, because I am in that place of like, you know, just getting so butthurt about stuff, like taking stuff so personally and like making it mean so much stuff and getting like stuck in my own narrative, yeah, I was like really hurt. So I ended up making a TikTok video, and this was probably the meanest TikTok video I think I've ever made, directed towards Carrie, where I was just like, no, essentially. I was just like, unless you've got words for me, like, don't fucking bother. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was pretty mad. So yeah, I posted that TikTok being like, fucking get it together. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, I was frustrated because I was like, you should know how to do this. It didn't occur to me that, you know, my expectations were like in need of an adjustment. Let's just say that. And anyway, towards the end of that video, I essentially say like, I still need explicit words. So unless you've got a little something for me, a little 3 words, 8 letters, say it and I'm yours, little something, like, don't bother. I might insert the clip of me saying that in just for the sake of, you know, like, it's very relevant for the next 2 songs. So, you know, I think it's worth, you know, putting it in here. And you know what? Like, I've accepted the fact that the universe going to be universing and putting stuff in front of my face that reminds me of her, because for whatever reason, it's our biggest cheerleader. But you know what drives me crazy? When Carrie plays these same old games again, when I feel like I've been very explicit about, like, I do not bother, honey. Like, if you're not going to come to me with like some explicit words, if you're not going to get it together, like, actually don't bother. Like, I feel like I've been very clear. I don't need any more subtle references. I don't need any more implicit back and forths. Like, I've been needing some explicit and physical words and actions for a while. So unless you got a little something like that for me, maybe like a 3 words, 8 letters, little something, say it and I'm yours, like, maybe even an apology for like letting your record label hang me out to dry and get like attacked online literally for telling the truth. Like, I'm just gonna have you muted on Instagram and Twitter now. Yeah, obviously at the time I was really, really mad. Like, I look back at that and I was like, man, was I pissed off at her at the time. And, you know, like, as clear as I thought I was being, like, I was also definitely projecting and assuming a lot of things that was making that situation so much worse, because, you know, like, all the things that I was reading into the situation was definitely hurting my feelings way, way more. I was getting way more butthurt about stuff. And yeah, like, fortunately for Carrie, like, she does have her friends like come in and bat for her, specifically Kelsey Ballerini. Like, Kelsey has jumped in to bat for her so many fucking times. Like, when I've been upset at her about stuff, Kelsey's like subtly posted stuff to kind of like give me the 411 of what's going on. And fortunately for Carrie, like, I do trust Kelsey's energy a lot more than I trust hers at times. And that's just, you know, the unfortunate reality of having been burned by a lot of people with a lot of masculine energy. So I tend to trust feminine energy a little bit easier. And, you know, had she had a bit more feminine energy, like, I probably would have had an easier time in this situation, but also I probably wouldn't have been attracted enough to her to stay in this situation for this long. You know what I'm saying? Like, it would have been a catch-22. But anyway, that's a tangent for another day. Essentially 3 days after I posted that TikTok, just being so fucking mad and being like, girl, get it together. Kelsey posted on her Instagram with a caption and she wrote in all caps, "Get it together, Kelsey." And I knew immediately as soon as I saw it, I was like, she's trying to tell me that Carrie's trying to get it together. And, you know, like that's happened a lot of times. I'm not going to lie, like Kelsey's like said stuff a lot of times. And, you know, fortunately, like the way she said it to me has landed a little bit better than when Carrie's trying to tell me the same thing. Because of, you know, like all my hang-ups to do with like trusting masculine energy. Like, yeah, it doesn't land sometimes with me. But yeah, like Kelsey definitely came into bat for her and definitely softened me up a bit with a few things that she posted around that time. Like, yeah, definitely worked. Kelsey definitely like wing-womaned the shit out of Carrie, and it definitely worked. But anyway, the thing I said right at the very end of that TikTok, the 3 words, 8 letters thing, that's actually a quote from Gossip Girl. It's essentially, a quote from a scene where Blair Waldorf is asking Chuck Bass to say something to, you know, make her stay and not run off with the prince. She says 3 words, 8 letters, say it and I'm yours. He can't say it. She runs off with the prince. You know what I'm saying? So that's where that's from. I might insert a clip of that as well, just so you can see, what I was quoting. Because again, that's going to be very relevant for like how I think this is all going to pan out.
3 words. 8 letters. Say it, and I'm yours. Thank you.
And that's the reason why when Carrie was making her antidote announcement post and slicing together like all of the 8 letters of antidote across the 8 days that she was using the billboard to announce it, she specifically used 8 letters in 8 days as a caption for that reel to reference like 3 words, 8 letters, say it and I'm yours. 8 letters, you know what I'm saying? Like, and obviously my birthday's the 8th. Like that's what this was referencing. And again, this is gonna like it'll all tie together after I talk about the next song and then how I think everything's gonna play out. But yeah, this is all deliberate. This is all intentional. This is all like referencing Gossip Girl essentially. And yeah, like that's very important to the lore of like how this song and the next song came to be and how I think everything's going to go down in the end. But anyway, after I made this TikTok being like 3 words, 8 letters, say it and I'm yours, then Carrie started dropping ILY in so much stuff. Like she sent out this text, like I think literally like maybe that weekend or like literally like a few days later, she sent out this mass text talking about Becky So Hot being nominated for a VMA, and ends it with ILY, thank you so much. And like basically from then on, she keeps putting ILY in things. And also like her friends are putting ILY in things. Like I saw Alex saying ILY. I saw Tess saying ILY. I saw Kelsey saying ILY. I don't think I got screenshots of most of it, but yeah, I definitely saw them doing it. Carrie's also replied ILY a couple of times to different people's tweets on Twitter. Like I saw it all the fucking time. And like that was nice in the sense of like, you know, I knew that that was directed at me and I knew her friends were like, you know, saying it for me. But at the same time, like a little part of me was like, it's kind of missing the point though, you know what I'm saying? Like I didn't say that I needed to hear explicit words just for fun, you know what I'm saying? Like I do actually need to hear those explicit words, you know what I'm saying? Like seeing all your friends and you post ILY on the internet everywhere is like not cutting it at the same time, you know what I'm saying? Like I asked for something, it's not that fucking hard to do, you know what I'm saying? Like I need some explicit words and like 3 letters, even though I know what it's supposed to mean, like at the same time, at the time I was a little bit salty. I was like, this is not what I asked for. And you know it's not what I asked for. And this is the thing with Carrie. Like, I feel like often in our connection, there's been moments where, you know, there's been an opportunity for, you know, like her to be very vulnerable and to give away like a little bit of her power and control in a situation by like meeting me with something that I'm asking for. But, you know, there's something like often, I'm not saying it's all the time, but, you know, I feel like there's been more than one incident where, you know, she's given me very close to what I've asked for, but not all the way, because then that would be way too vulnerable, because you'd have to give away too much power and control in a situation, and put herself in too vulnerable of a position. Like I get the sense that that like there's something about that feels like threatening in some way, and yeah, she seems to have a hard time with that. Like when I'm asking for something, she seems to have a hard time sometimes giving that to me, because like I think there's something about the vulnerability of like letting go of the power and control in a situation. Like I have brought that up to her, and I have, you know, been like, girl, you got to work on it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not going to be the end of the world if you give your power away a couple of times. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like most times she's got to like hold on to the ability to kind of like retop any situation. Like, she just like won't let herself be like bottomed in a situation, like energetically. Like, she has to keep the upper hand a lot of the time, I feel. And I'm just like, you're going to have to be vulnerable at some point. Like, may as well sooner rather than later, you know what I'm saying? Like, but anyway, like, I don't know, like, I've only brought that up to her recently, so we'll see how that goes. We'll see how it goes with, like, her letting herself be a little bit vulnerable in situations and actually giving up a little bit more power and control than she might necessarily want to. And Carrie, if you're watching this, which I'm assuming you are, just remember that if you want to take power and control in this type of situation, that is dependent on me feeling emotionally safe with you, me getting my emotional needs met by, you know, being able to ask you for things, and you being able to be vulnerable and giving me those things in the situation outside of the bedroom. You know what I'm saying? Like, this only happens when, you know, you can be vulnerable elsewhere. So like, what would you rather? Would you rather take all the power and control in situations where I'm literally just asking you for things, like emotional things? Or would you like to take power and control in a situation where it's like kinky and fun and we're both enjoying it? Something to think about. But anyway, back to the story. Not long after all that law went down, there was like one other thing that kind of went down that was like very similar, and therefore might have ended up in the song. But, you know, essentially we had another kind of like tussle not long after, around the time that she went to the Beyonce concert. And after that concert, I used a filter on TikTok that was the apology you need, which, you know, like at the time, like I had been wanting an apology for a while. So I tested the filter to see what it said. And it turns out, like, on the very first try, I got, "I'm sorry that I made you feel unloved. I love you so much," which, you know, was essentially exactly the words that I'd been wanting to hear. But I was like really pissed off that I did not hear them from Carrie's mouth, and I heard them on a filter at the time. So yeah, I launched my phone across the garden. I launched that bitch into the sky. You know what I'm saying? I bet my phone felt alive. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that was like one other, like, I love you kind of little tidbit that, you know, might work its way into the song, particularly given like what Carrie put on the X's and O's playlist. There was like an "I Miss You, I'm Sorry" song that went on there that, you know, was supposed to be like about me, I believe. And so that's what makes me believe that, you know, this TikTok might have ended up in the ILY song. Like, I think the ILY song might, like, obviously express sentiments of "I love you," but then also maybe a bit of an "I'm sorry, I miss you" kind of vibe as well. I have a feeling that, you know, like all these things together, like, might have, you know, kind of turned into a song. And if all of these things are in the same song together, if the ILY and I miss you, I'm sorry vibes all ended up together, like through like all this lore that I've just explained, I do think it's possible that this track might end up as the 5th track, because in that case I feel like it would be maybe more of that kind of like more devastated essence that a 5th track normally is. But I put it in the 9th position mostly because, yeah, it seems like, you know, like given the number 9 lore, I just feel like it feels relevant to that position as well. And in terms of like painting a narrative, I think throughout the album, I think it would make sense to come towards the end, to be kind of like the final kind of like altercation before like the album reaches a resolution. So yeah, that's why I've put it at number 9. I think it is possibly a track 5 kind of track, but yeah, for now I'm like putting it at number 9. I think track 10 is going to be called I'm Yours, and I think it's going to be featuring Kelsey Ballerini, and the lore with this particular track goes all the way back to about March 2023 when I wrote this poem, that essentially goes, you never know what these hallways are hurtling you towards. Locked windows, shut doors may prevent distractions, keeping you from what's meant to be yours. And pretty much straight after I posted that particular poem, Carrie was posting on her Instagram stories, I think, that, yeah, she was in a hallway and it was a 10 out of 10 hallway. And I knew as soon as I saw this Instagram story, I was like, this is supposed to be referencing that poem that I just wrote. And yeah, that kind of set off my spidey senses and made me think that it was going to turn into a song. I was like, if she's dropping an Easter egg, it'll turn into a song. Like I could almost guarantee it. And by Pride Month, it was all but confirmed, because for Pride, Carrie was headlining Nashville Pride, and the way that she decided to announce it was through this post that is captioned, Nashville, I'm all yours for Pride this year, so stoked to headline. And the thing that kind of like tickled my spidey senses with that particular wording was like, you played so many shows during Pride Month, like saying that I'm all yours feels a little bit like incorrect. So I was like, that feels like it's deliberate. That feels like it's supposed to be referencing a track on the album. And what I found interesting was that it was for the Nashville like Pride in particular that she captioned it I'm all yours, given that Kelsey Ballerini lives in Nashville. And wouldn't you know, about a week before Nashville Pride, so obviously Nashville Pride was announced quite a whiles away, but just 1 week before Nashville Pride, Kelsey Ballerini gets on TikTok and she does this like vlog of like, be with me for a day, and it's like fucking 3 minutes long, and right at the very end, this is what she says.
Tour starts tomorrow, 14 more shows to end this little chapter of music together. I look gorgeous. I'm trying to cram in as many surprises as I can, and my next 3.5 weeks, I'm all yours. I'll see you tomorrow.
Like, you can't tell me that that isn't supposed to be a collab Easter egg. Like, that surely, like, I just feel like the way she said it too, it felt deliberate. It felt like she was intentionally trying to plant an Easter egg in there. And I clocked it. And, you know, that basically, as far as I was concerned, confirmed that I'm all yours, or I'm yours, is going to be on the track list. And it's going to be featuring Kelsey Ballerini. And even though this lore obviously, you know, is like happens super, super early in the story, I think it is going to be placed potentially as track 10, or at the very least after ILY. The reason why I think that is obviously because of the ILY lore, like ended up being tied up with, Chuck and Blair kind of lore. And I think it would just make sense for her to make the tracks appear one after the other, given that, you know, the Chuck and Blair lore obviously is like 3 words, 8 letters, say it, and I'm yours. And she already had a song on the track list called I'm Yours. Like, it would just make sense for her to put them one after the other, even though technically ILY would have been written way after I'm Yours. Like, I just think that would be the smart thing to do. Like, she already had half the reference ready. You know what I'm saying? Like, all she had to do was slot ILY in right before it. And so I think those two tracks will appear one after the other, potentially in the positions track 9 and potentially as tracks 9 and 10. I think that makes the most sense. And yeah, like I also like that track 10 obviously reduces down to 1, which is all about new beginnings. And yeah, I think that's basically the essence of what my poem's talking about. It's like making sure you close previous chapters so you can have, the right story with the right person. And so that numerology wise, that makes a lot of sense to me too. So I really think that'll be the vibe. I think track 11 is going to be the title track. I think it's going to be the Finding Rewilding track, but I have not a goddamn clue what this song is going to entail. I have thought about it, and obviously Carrie's left find and wild clues up the wazoo, but she's never really left any indication of what the actual track is going to be about. I have no idea what the track is going to be about. I just know that it's going to exist. I know that it's going to appear on the album, and it makes sense to be in the 11th position, given that Antidote, which is the title track for the prequel to the Finding Rewilding album, the prologue to the Finding Rewilding album, it makes sense for it to be the 11th track, but I have no idea what the vibe of the song's going to be. She could take it in so many directions. But yeah, I think it's maybe supposed to be a surprise. And so, yeah, I'm just going to not think about it too much and just see what happens. I think track 11 is going to be Finding Rewilding, but I have no idea what the song's going to be about. So we'll just have to wait and see. And they're all my track predictions. I think it makes sense for it to be an 11-track album. And yeah, they're all the things that I think are going to be on it. And yeah, they're all the things that I have very strong Easter eggs about at the very least. So yeah, I'd expect all these tracks to be on there. She might surprise me with something. Potentially, if she does try and surprise me, I think it might appear on a deluxe version of the album. And yeah, that's what I've got so far for the Finding Rewilding album predictions. I think the Finding Rewilding album is going to drop on June 21st, and the reason for that is because June 21st happens to be National Daylight Appreciation Day, given that it is the summer solstice, so the longest day of the year, the day with the most daylight. So of course, it's the perfect day to celebrate the benefits of the sun. And if you've been following along, if you've watched my In Search of the Antidote Tour visuals breakdown video, you'll be across how important this is to the lore, and that, Carrie's essentially creating this contrast between two muses on the In Search of the Antidote album and in the tour visuals for the In Search of Antidote tour. She essentially creates this contrast between two muses where one is compared to black and white, a black hole, the Three of Swords, a knife tattoo, the list goes on, whereas the second muse is comparative to, the sun, the Lover's card, the flaming heart tattoo on her arm. She's made this contrast, this distinction between the two muses in all of her art right now. That is the foundation of everything that's happening in the Fletchiverse as far as, her art goes, this kind of contrast. And what better way to kind of bring this full circle, tie it all together in a neat little bow than to drop the Finding Rewilding album, the album associated with that second muse, the Sunshine Muse, then to drop it on National Daylight Appreciation Day on June 21st, which is about a month away. I think there's actually something brewing in the water that might lead to a few artists dropping some things on that day this year, on National Daylight Appreciation Day. For example, someone who's already confirmed to be releasing an album on June 21st on National Daylight Appreciation Day is Gracie Abrams. And I think that's why, personally, Carrie wanted to use Gracie Abrams songs when she was attaching songs to her podcasts podcast episodes on the X's and O's, I think she knew Gracie was dropping an album on the same day as she is. And she wanted to use Gracie Abrams songs, particularly with the second episode, which is supposed to be tied to me, to hint that, you know, she's going to have her album also dropping on Daylight Appreciation Day, particularly the album about, you know, the second muse, and, you know, the muse that's supposed to be tied to these Gracie Abrams songs, I Miss You, I'm Sorry. And obviously I think she wanted to use Close to You, but unfortunately it was unreleased at the time that she did the podcast episode. And obviously that's reflected in her posting this TikTok to Close to You by Gracie Abrams and then cutting a little screenshot from it and putting it on her Instagram carousel in the 9th position, which is, you know, 9's obviously associated with me, particularly given that in that same carousel, she posted something to the 6th slide that I think is definitely tied to the other muse from the In Search of Antidote album, the first muse, the Black Hole Muse. Yeah, like it's definitely giving like her trying to Easter egg that, yeah, she's going to be dropping something on National Daylight Appreciation Day, given that, yeah, she's kind of like creating this juxtaposition in this Instagram carousel where the 6th slide is associated with the first muse the same way that the 2 songs associated with the first podcast episode is associated with the first muse. And then the clip at the very end of that Instagram carousel is associated with the second muse the same way the 2 songs associated with the second podcast episode are associated with the second muse. Like, it's giving logical. And when it comes to how the album announcement and how the promo is going to go, I'm back on my theory that she's going to drop the last coordinates that are related to the last letter from the Antidote promo and the last quote from the Antidote promo, both of which did not have a physical location associated with them. And I think the coordinates she's going to drop are going to be to Melbourne, Australia, which is my nearest city. Then I think she's going to get on a goddamn plane. Hence the plane imagery that she dropped with the last 2 letters. So T and O came with this like plane imagery of her kind of like taking off at night and then arriving somewhere else in the morning. So taking an extremely long flight. And my best guess is that this flight is going to be taken from Paris after the In Search of Antidote tour in Europe wraps. Originally, I thought this flight was going to be from LA straight to Melbourne, but yeah, like the flight from Paris to Melbourne would also be a long flight, an overnight flight. And also I think it does make sense for her to come straight here immediately after tour. I don't think she'll go back to the States before she comes here. Plus that would make all of the Paris clues that I was picking up on a few videos ago like fit with this kind of like timeline. I think, you know, like she's been hinting too heavily at Paris for that to not be relevant. So I think she's going to take off from Paris, but I think she's going to wait until after she's dropped the Lesbian Crush music video, which was obviously filmed in Paris, which would mean that it's the 3rd music video filmed in Paris for, you know, her current projects. You know what they say, 3rd time's the charm. So hopefully after this 3rd music video, there's some sort of like visual towards the end of her getting on a goddamn plane. And hopefully she goes and gets on a goddamn plane. You know what I'm saying? And the final piece to the puzzle that would make her taking off from Paris make so much more sense is that in Gossip Girl, after Chuck and Blair have that altercation where she says 3 words, 8 letters, say it and I'm yours, and he fails to say it and she rides off into the sunset with the prince, you know, later down the line, of course, they get their happily ever after moment when Chuck comes back from Europe with an armload of beautiful gifts, ready to say, I love you. And one of the things that he happens to bring her from Paris is macaroons. And the thing about that is that when Carrie was doing her Girl of My Dreams promo boxes in June last year, in Pride Month last year, she made them like around the world theme. And they had like, you know, things from the UK in them. And they also had macaroons from Paris in them. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it's what it looks like it is, like that's some mastermind level stuff. That is, like, to tie it all together like that is wild. And just to make this more wild, other than the fact that these boxes also contained a collab with JD Sports and had JD plus Fletcher equals girl of my dreams written on the top, she actually wrapped these boxes in imagery that she stole basically from my TikTok page. On my TikTok page, I've had a video pinned to my profile since 2022 that I use so that people can find me. And it just so happens that the cover art for that video is Find Me. And yeah, like, if what she is going to do is get on a plane from Paris with, you know, like this sort of stuff on board, like ready to go, like very Chuck Bass style, and then come find me in Melbourne, like get a flight to come find me. Like, that's just, that makes it even crazier. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is wild. And all this could go down like any minute now. Like, as I'm filming this, it is like the wee hours of early morning on Friday in Australia. So Carrie's going to play her last show of her European tour in Dublin in a few hours, because obviously they're a few hours behind us. And yeah, I think, you know, basically like all this could start going down anytime from when that show starts to, you know, anytime kind of over the weekend. I have a feeling that probably the most likely series of events would be that she finishes her show in Dublin on Thursday night and then wakes up in Paris Friday morning and then announces the music video and song premiere like all at one time. Like, I think it'll come out, the music video and the song will come out all at the same time, but it'll be based on US times, the US time zone, and it'll be like premiering Friday morning in the US, which is still a little while away, I think. Yeah, so like probably, you know, similar times that she released Errors of Us and Lead Me On. I think that was like 9 or 10 a.m. In the US morning time. So it'll basically be Saturday here in Australia by the time all this happens. So I've still got like at least another day, at least 24 hours, I think, before she like announces it, I'm pretty sure. And then it'll probably take her another 24 hours to get here, I would say, after that. So I think, you know, I've potentially got a 48-hour window, in which time I have to obviously quickly try and finish filming and editing this video, which I'm going to try and edit it before I go to sleep, and then get it uploading while I'm sleeping tonight. Obviously, because, you know, like I want it up ASAP. It'll probably take a day to upload anyway, but yeah, like I'll do that. And then, you know, like I'll probably spend at least 24 to 48 hours just freaking out and not knowing what to do with myself. So yeah, that's the vibe. So essentially that's everything that I'm expecting to happen with Finding Rewilding. Like basically any minute now, like I'm really expecting all this to go down in the next like 24 to 48 hours, I think. And so we'll see if I'm right, or if, you know, I'm a little bit off and need to find a better way to like integrate everything. I'm pretty, like this time it feels like I've surely got all the pieces of the puzzle together. Like it's been so hard because I get like bits and pieces and I'm like, this makes sense, but then that doesn't make sense, but then this makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Like with the me going to Paris theory, I was like, but that doesn't make sense in terms of the antidote launch me into the sky, make me feel like I'm alive. Like that sounds like she wants to come here. But then at the same time, I was like, but how does Paris relate? You know what I'm saying? Whereas this kind of makes it all make sense. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I feel like this surely has to be it this time. Like I think I've gotten all the pieces of the puzzle finally together. So, you know, like I hope I'm, you know, at least ballpark right this time. Because, you know, if I have to keep guessing, like I'm going to run out of steam. Like I'm already pretty like fucking like burnt out, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know if my noodle's going to be much better, you know, to keep going after this. So hopefully I've got it this time. But yeah, that's everything. I think that's all the goss that we need for the Finding Rewilding pre-release kind of video. Like that's all the things that we need to go over. And so, yeah, I think I'm going to leave it here and try and like smash out the editing so I can have this uploading at night because, you know, like for all I know, like she could start doing stuff in a few more hours. So I kind of got to get it together. Like I didn't leave myself enough time for real. So yeah, I'm going to go do that and upload it and see what happens. And yeah, like until I have another update and, you know, who knows what the next update could be, you know what I'm saying? Like, who knows what that motherfucker will be? Like, maybe I'll be right, maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe she'll be here by the time, you know, I go to make another video, which would be fucking heaven. Like, please, like, it's been like 600 days. Like, let's get it together already. And so, yeah, like until I see you again in who knows what circumstances, ciao.